the money for the freedom of speech. And that's what makes me the only American that we know that really deserves to run the country, because everyone else, your boy DeSantis, Trump, whoever they raise in a petri dish over on the Democrat side is going to play the game.
Look,
and like,
here's what I was trying to get to.
Mm-hmm.
You went right into the anti-Semite thing. I think it's something that should be talked about. But if you start bringing this up, you're going to ask my opinion on it. I'm going to disagree with you.
I didn't ask your opinion on it. You jumped into it.
But
I don't care about your opinion. I like your opinion on how we win an election, but I don't care about anybody's opinion, bro. I lost. They tried to put me in jail. They blocked $2 billion I had. Like, but I told Farrakhan, I said, look, is it anti-Semitic for me to say his name out loud? Like, I told
minister.
Yeah, the minister. Like, I told
Obama met with him too.
Oh, he was. Yeah, I mean, the Jewish people allowed Obama to meet with the minister. So Farrakhan said, well, did he have the money? The contract for the next 4 years, if I hadn't done anything, would have been $500 million a year for 4 years. What I was fighting for was the IP, so my children could, I'm sorry, just sometimes I think about 7 thoughts at one time, because anything I see, I come up with like 7 answers to it and then just choose what it is. But the thing is, when I said my children, the reason why my brain kind of blocked, because it's like God is saying, your children are going to be okay. Baby mama's got money, right? God is using me. He's breaking me down, removing all of the, richest person, all of this, so I can serve him. And the more and more those things are taken away from me, the more I can be empty and be a vessel and be able to be used. And right now it's like, you're not going to take, if we can't, you're not going to take my pain away, right? The Jewish people say, it's the Holocaust, this happened, and you can't say anything about it. We can't take their pain away. No one's going to denounce the fact that they tried to lock me up. That's what, because every time I'm just holding stride, and it's like, I thought I was more Malcolm X, but I find out I'm more MLK, because as I'm getting hosed down every day by the press and financially, I'm just standing there. And when I found out that they tried to put me in jail, it was like a dog was biting my arm, and I almost shed a tear, almost, but I still walked in stride through it. Yeah,
I think they've been extremely unfair to you.
Who is they though? We can't say who they is, can we?
Press. I'm not using I don't use the word as the way I guess you guys use. I'm talking.
It is
about
them though, isn't it? I mean, because because when you think about it, consider it. In 2018.
What do you mean it's not?
What do I mean? Like, okay, so how about, are you leaving?
Are you afraid of the press?
He's gone. I'll say it right now.
And
you guys want to bring that stuff?
There it is, folks. KanYE West walks out on Timcast. The biggest story of the evening. And as a former guest of Timcast, I don't like doing reaction shows, but since I've been on Timcast, I feel an obligation to do my part in the grift on this one. So I'm going to break down for you what I believe exactly happened here and how Milo Yiannopoulos is the troll master, ladies and gentlemen. He is the troll master. He used Trump, Nick Fuentes, TimcastIRL, and the multi-billionaire KanYE West to troll the world. That's what he did here today, or last night, actually. He used the entire apparatus, all of media, to troll the world. That's what Milo Yiannopoulos did, and make no mistake, he is the architect of everything that we have seen, and all of this is to fulfill a promise that he made back when Trump sloughed him off, when he got canceled, to make him pay. And even if that wasn't what I believe his goal was, which I think it's partly, he is just the troll. And he used and manipulated KanYE West, Donald Trump, TimcastIRL, and the mainstream media to troll everyone. When Milo was on Timcast a few weeks ago, they asked him if he was going to go back on Twitter. And his response to that was that he had already conquered that medium, that he'd already broken that system. And that was his first interview in almost 5 years, was that Timcast show a few weeks ago with Milo Yiannopoulos. And if you go back and you watch that cast with Milo, that Timcast episode, you can see that he talks a lot about vengeance. He talks a lot about getting revenge. And make no mistake, from minute one of the time you started seeing Milo Yiannopoulos' name in conjunction with Ye or KanYE West's name, this has been a troll. And he admits it, and gleefully, as you will see, is because we're going to go through the first 20 minutes of this, the point that KanYE walks out, we're going to go through the beginning of it. And he is gleeful in his trolling. But before we get to that, please like, subscribe, super chats are open. Would appreciate that. This is an early morning cast. Most people did theirs late last night. I decided to do it first thing in the morning to bring you this earth-shaking news of KanYE West walking off TimcastIRL. But please like, subscribe, share the channel, hit the bell, all of those things. Super chat if you want to jump in. I will be joined shortly by the infamous Hard Hat Intellectual, Hard Hat Beast. He's had several accounts on Twitter. Just a warning, he is an anarchist, but he is not Antifa. He's a very philosophical, blue-collar dad worker that just so happens to be so libertarian he believes there should be no government at all. But he is not Antifa. He's not anything like that. So if you've never heard of him, he's an incredibly intelligent man. I've had many DM conversations with Hard Hat Intellectual. I don't even know his real name. This is going to be the first time I've actually talked to him when he comes on the podcast here in a moment. As long as everything's working out, let me check on that just real quick. He hasn't. Yeah, he should be on in just a second. So wait for that. He's going to help dig into this, and he will have some insights nonetheless. So we're going to start just by going through the beginning, the first 20 minutes of the Timcast episode. Now, it must be noted, and I'm going to couch this. KanYE West says some very revealing things here that nobody is hitting on yet about not only his mental state, but his maturity and his viewpoints, which obviously are very controversial. But there's a lot in what he says. There's a lot in how he interacts and the words he chooses and the way that he frames things that's actually very prescient. It's actually very self-reflective, pardon me, and should give us an idea of why KanYE West is so susceptible to the manipulation of someone like Milo Yiannopoulos, who is a brilliant psychopathic troll who was canceled and I believe has been sitting for 5 years waiting for the very moment that he could drop a bomb into Trump's lap, into the lap of the Republican Party, into the lap of the establishment, into the lap of many different people whom he feels he owes retribution. And if you are familiar with Milo Yiannopoulos, retribution is his main point of joy. Trolling is what made him famous. And this, I believe, and I believe we can see it, and we'll explain. So it's his piece à la résistance of trolling. It is his Mona Lisa, his opus, his magnum opus of trolling is what he just succeeded in doing. So a bit of background, if you don't know, KanYE West went to dinner with Donald Trump, Milo Yiannopoulos, and this is a point that nobody's really bringing up, including Tim. The head of Timcast's news editorial, Timcast.com's editorial, editor-in-chief, also helped set this up. So keep that in mind. But they went to dinner at Mar-a-Lago. KanYE West had the dinner already booked. He brings with him Milo. Milo introduces him to Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes is he is a white identitarian. It would be a good way, the nice way to say that. But he is not accepted, even more so than Milo Yiannopoulos. Nick Fuentes is not accepted in polite society. And they went to dinner at Mar-a-Lago. Okay, so KanYE had a dinner set before the election. KanYE met Milo. Milo introduced him to Nick. They all go to Mar-a-Lago to have dinner with Trump. And that's where we pick up this story, because Nick Fuentes, they call him a white supremacist. I don't know enough about Nick Fuentes. I've not watched Nick Fuentes. I know I've read some about him. He is as close to anybody I've seen still on the internet with any kind of following that you could deem a white supremacist or a white identitarian. Again, I've not done all of my homework on him, but I know that people like Tim and, many different people, including many different senators, Ted Cruz, various others, okay, do not believe that this man should be sitting down with the former president of the United States because of his views on race. KanYE West, if you haven't noticed, in the last few weeks, has been under fire, being deplatformed, being debanked. JP Morgan Chase, Adidas have all removed their business ties with him because of his anti-Semitic statements. So there's your background. Again, like, subscribe, share the channel, share the video. Get this out there. It's early in the morning. Wake up. I'm a morning person sometimes. So here we go. We're going to dive right into this. Hopefully, Hard Hat will be here soon, and you won't want to miss this guy. He's brilliant. He's legitimately brilliant, and I think he'll have some insights on this, and then we might just start riffing on other things, because every time he and I talk via text, we get into very long conversations, because he is an anarchist and I am a conservative, and that presents some very interesting collisions and interesting agreements at different points. So I'm interested to talk to him. Hopefully he'll be here. But let's dive right into this. This is the beginning of Timcast. We're going to go through the first 20 minutes. I will stop at various points and give you my analysis of this based upon my expert experience, having sat in the same seat that you will see KanYE West, sit in during this video. So you've got Tim, Luke, KanYE, Nick Fuentes, and the producer guy. Oh, and Milo Yiannopoulos. Okay. So here's Hard Hat. Hold on. Let me bring him in. We'll do the intro before we start the video. Hello.
What's up, man?
How you doing?
I'm doing,
Let me,
you know.
You are on the air, by the way. You are live. Okay. So
Thank you.
first, this is Hard Hat Beast, Hard Hat Intellectual. He is an anarchist philosopher, blue collar, intellectual father. And again, I will make this statement. He is not Antifa. Okay. He's not anything like that. He's just a legit anarchist. But you are also in the dark, man. If you can get a little bit more of the light.
Yeah, this light is
You don't
terrible,
want people
dude.
to see that ugly mug.
Yeah, I'm trying to hide it, dude. I'm trying to hide it.
Okay. All right. So, okay. So introduce yourself. I just gave you a gallant introduction. I told everybody how absolutely intelligent you are, the kind of conversations we have via Twitter DMs, and that you will have some insight here, I believe, to add to this grift session upon KanYE West walking out. So just introduce yourself. First of all, what do you want me to call you? Because I've never actually spoken to you. What's your name? Or do you want to give that out?
You could just call me. My name's Josh.
Josh. All right, cool. So what do you do, brother?
I did construction for years. I did concrete, and right now I'm currently working in logistics for management, like corporate entry level type stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little absurd right now in that kind of work environment, but other than that, man, between work and family, I just read. I get my hands on books and I just pound away, page after page. Anybody can do it. Yes, you do.
Mm-hmm. You outread me, which is pretty impressive. And you've shared some really great stuff with me, expand my mind, and I really do appreciate that. But so what we're going to do here is I was just getting ready to dive into the video. Okay. And I know you have some interesting views on this, on what happened with KanYE West and Tim last night. And like I told my audience, I don't normally like doing reaction videos, not really my thing, not really what I do. But since I was a guest on Timcast, I figure I should offer my extra opinion and take advantage of the grift that goes along with it. So we're going to dive right in here. I'm going to stop at various points. You jump in when you want, and we'll just nail this down because I know you have some good insights on it. So have you watched it? You did. You posted something on it yesterday, right?
Yeah, I watched it. Yeah.
I saw your post on it. Interesting. We're going to have an interesting conversation. So here we go.
What do you do?
Oh, I'm a live streamer. I do a show called America First on cozy.tv.
So this is Nick Fuentes.
And of course, Milo, you were here a couple weeks ago.
Yes, I'm your best ever guest.
So we've been told that the episode with you was one of the best podcasts ever. People really enjoyed hearing you speak.
I think that's accurate.
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
thanks for coming back.
Thanks. I was wondering how I was going to make it even more extraordinary the second time I visited, but I think I might have pulled it off.
You think? Okay, so real quick, Josh, did you watch Milo on Timcast a few weeks ago?
I watched some. I didn't really pay too much attention to. I wasn't really too intrigued by Milo, but I did watch it. I didn't really get pulled too much from him, per se. But
do you have any opinions on him going back or at all?
I mean, if you get down to the nitty gritty, man, it's all the same stuff. It's pretty much the same perpetuating problem when it comes to a lot of these discussions. And that's what I was trying to pretty much, get through when it came to a lot of this. And I don't think people see it. It's very hard to spot, because it's so ingrained with society. But yeah, man, it's definitely this video definitely illuminates it though. Once you get to the climax, it definitely illuminates it for sure. Yeah.
And it's not that long in. He was only on about 20 minutes. So we're going
to it was like 20 minutes. Yeah, it was like 20 minutes or something like that too.
Right. And we're going to go into it, but I will say Milo, like my YouTube thumbnail says, Milo is the troll master, and that's what he made himself to be. And I believe, just so you know, my premise, Josh, my premise here is that Milo orchestrated almost all of this in order to troll the world. And I think you'll see that if you pay attention to the way that it all came out about how the dinner with Trump happened and how they then ended up at Timcast. And I don't know if you know this, Josh, but Cassandra, I can't remember her name right now, but Timcast editor-in-chief, timcastnews.com editor-in-chief was also involved in setting up this dinner. So Tim's hand a little bit behind the scenes could be involved in this whole shindig with Nick Fuentes and Trump and Milo having dinner and it causing a stir. So I need to confirm some of that, but I know for a fact that I saw that she was involved in some way, shape, or form with this dinner. So just so you have that context. So moving forward.
Luke's here.
Total sausage fest tonight.
Yeah, we don't care about you, Luke.
And if this started to
Don't care about you.
All right. Yeah. Pence said,
Okay,
and,
so
I'll just pull up this story from The Hill, which is from earlier today, 5 p.m. Pence says Trump should apologize. It's wrong to give anti-Semite a seat at the table. This, of course, is related to a dinner that happened, and I was wrong a little on the details. So a dinner happened. Nick, you were there. Yay, you were there. I just want to start off by how did this dinner come to happen and what happened?
Wait a minute. Didn't you just say
to Trump for about a month? We had
what?
scheduled.
Oh, sorry. What?
Yeah, I was just going to point out because that's interesting because the statement you just made that you said you heard that his hand already had a play into the dinner. If you heard how he framed that question, he acted like he didn't even know about it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
but now keep in mind, Tim is very smart. Tim controls that room. So for everybody who's never been there, which I'm assuming is most, and yes, I have been there. And I will keep saying that because it gets people to watch my show. He controls the room, and he actually talks about this later on in the episode, about him holding up his hand, about him basically literally conducting the room. And if you watch his episode with Milo, that's what he was not able to do with Milo because Milo just ignored him and just took over the room. But part of what you'll see later on is that Tim, from what I can gather, does not walk into situations for which he is not in control. So let's just get that, and whether that's his own environment or he has something set up in it, but he knew this was going to happen. He knew they were coming, and they were in this room together. All of these people involved, and they talk about this later on, all together for an hour before this started, which is, from my experience, I did not enter the room that for the show that I did with them until 15 minutes before the show started. He did not enter the room. He was downstairs playing pool. Okay. 17 minutes before the show started with me. So they were setting up cameras and talking through things and talking about things for an hour before they started the actual show, which, from what I can gather and from what I've talked to with other people, James Lindsay, that's not normally the way that he operates. But yes, to get to your point, his editor-in-chief for his news company, Timcast News, was involved in the setup for the dinner for this. But yes, he's asking this, I think, to give him as much charity as possible. Okay. He's asking this in a way to set up KanYE to talk about the dinner. But one thing, since we stopped, that I do want to, later on, Tim says this. He says that I was not going to bring up the anti-Semitic issue, okay, before he was just going to talk about the news. That was his claim, right? He was going to talk about the news, but I want you to look at this headline, okay? Pence says Trump should apologize. Wrong to give anti-Semite a seat at the table. Like I said, Tim later on says that he was just going to talk about news stories. They weren't going to bring up the anti-Semite issue, right? And KanYE making those comments. And if you notice here, there's a pregnant pause. And I think that's what he had told KanYE before they started. And then he gets hit with this headline, which obviously, although Tim didn't bring it up by himself, right? He read the word anti-Semite, seat at the table, and who's the anti-Semite sitting at the table with Tim at that very moment? It's KanYE West and Nick Fuentes, right? Or if you want to take the line, the media line. So, but yes, he had a hand in it. I believe he had a hand in it, and nobody's talking about that, which I think is very, very interesting. So, would you have any thoughts on that whole diatribe?
Yeah, nah, dude, you brought up some really good points, man. I just, yeah, it's like, why have somebody come to your talk show if you're just gonna, want to hear yourself talk and talk about your own perspectives? Didn't the person come to the talk show for him to speak? You know what I mean?
Yes.
And
Yes.
if Tim Pool's a really intelligent person, which many people have said, well, then you can't promise somebody that you're not going to bring up the anti-Semitism comments and then go, whoops, my bad, bro. I didn't notice it in that headline there. Sorry.
Well, and here's another part of that, though. He didn't say he wouldn't bring it up. He said that it would come up. What he told Ye was that they would start with news stories and get into the dinner and not bring up the anti-Semite comments, right? Or that issue, so to speak, right? Because the dinner can be separate. Because the way Tim illustrates this later on in the video is that he wants to know what happened at the dinner. Right? That's whether it was, Nick Fuentes Trump knew Nick Fuentes, because the big story here is Trump, right? And the firestorm that's been caused over him sitting down with these people and having dinner. And Tim does a clever little kind of sleight of hand here. And he says, I wasn't going to talk about you saying these anti-Semitic things. I was going to talk about the news. But the news he brought up the anti-Semitic issue, not just the dinner, right? So that's that. Tim, this is when I say Tim is smart. Tim is smart. You know what I mean? He kind of he insulated himself. He gave himself plausible deniability. But if you read the damn headline, you can see that not only he brought up what KanYE maybe wasn't expecting because of what they talked about it before, and something that would be obviously jarring for him if he didn't think he was going to have to talk about it right out of the gate, right? So let's watch that little part again. And this is the kind of analysis I want to do on this that nobody else is doing, and I know you're going to be able to help with this, because it's a subtle media style manipulation, I think, that's happening here by Milo, by Nick Fuentes, and possibly by Tim Pool as well. We'll see what we can gather from that. So let's go on from here.
Should apologize. It's wrong to give anti-Semite a seat at the table. This, of course, is related to a dinner that happened, and I was wrong a little on the details. So a dinner happened. Nick, you were there. Ye, you were there. I just want to start off by, how did this dinner come to happen, and what happened?
Pregnant pause.
I was talking to Trump for about a month. We had scheduled the dinner in October, and then he announced for president. He pushed the dinner back to November. And I've been pulling together a campaign. And after I put up the DEF CON tweet, a bunch of people that had been canceled, like Alex Jones, I started getting in contact with other people that were now on the inside of the matrix. And
I think
Alex
you meant
Jones,
the outside of the matrix.
Producer, said that Milo wanted to contact me, and here we are.
So that's how you guys got in contact.
Okay, so I want to be very meticulous here, man. Milo got in contact with KanYE through Alex Jones, producer. That's the first connection. And I think that's important. We'll move forward.
Yeah, originally, and then I suggested that we bring in Nicholas as a enormous extra brain firepower that he is. Most extraordinarily brilliant political commentator of his generation. And he's been treated just about as badly as anybody. So I thought he deserved to be in the room too.
Okay. Do you know Nick Fuentes?
Yeah, I know Nick Fuentes.
Okay.
He's the one that had problems with Ben Shapiro and all those dudes in the past, right?
Yeah, I don't know him that well, to be honest. So I know what everyone thinks of him. I read a little bit about him before we came on, but he's the one I didn't know. And I know that he had a dust up with Ben Shapiro. He's had dust ups with other. Many people view him as a white nationalist or a white identitarian. Do you know any more about him than that?
Yeah, I pretty much heard the same thing. You know, the only thing, the problem I have with a lot of that is, you know, nobody can really specifically, you know, explain what that actually is. You know, everybody's getting slapped with these labels and nobody even knows what it is. So,
and that's why you're here, man. And we will get into that because I know and I think you have a point. And I think even KanYE hits a little bit on this point and kind of puts Tim into a box for a second with the point that you tweeted out earlier.
Yeah.
And I do want to discuss that. So keep hold of that. So what you're saying is that Nick Fuentes, what you know of him is that, and what everybody says about him, they say he's a white supremacist, a white nationalist, a white identitarian, right? And that's what most people think about him, and that's what's gotten Trump in trouble. But the thing I want to highlight here is that Milo got in contact with KanYE through Alex Jones' producer, and then Milo brought in Nick Fuentes. Okay? So Milo reached out to Alex Jones' producer to get in contact with KanYE. So Milo is the genesis of this happening, okay? And everybody needs to keep that in mind because it goes to my thesis, my hypothesis that Milo orchestrated this entire thing, maybe with the help of Timcast, maybe not, but he was definitely in the planning parts of what ended up happening, in not just with the dinner, but with this cast.
And yeah, that's pretty much how we got together.
So I have some questions about that, but we'll get through the dinner portion of, you know, how exactly this happened, what went down. So this is how you get in contact, the three of you. How is it that Nick ends up invited to this dinner, and what happened?
Well, he was rolling with me. I was impressed with Nick, and I was like, just come to the dinner. And we had Karen Giorno pick us up from the airport. And there was a lot of back and forth. There's another gentleman named Jamar Montgomery that was with us. He's an engineer at Boeing.
Which I think is interesting.
I'm telling him we should raise everyone's volume.
Okay, cool. And we sat there, and it was like when Trump came in, I said, do you want to sit alone? He's like, no, bring your friends in. So a big thing is like Trump had no idea who Nick Fuentes was. But this whole, I just got to go right.
Okay. So this is right before things pop off, but that is the main point when it comes to Trump, because people know that Trump has had dealings with KanYE West. He went to the Oval Office, right? He went to the Oval Office, wore the MAGA hat, all of those things. They know that they have a relationship. They know that Milo and Trump have a relationship because he worked on his first campaign in many different ways. Okay. So the issue here was with most people was Nick Fuentes, and him being a white nationalist or white supremacist or whatever label you want to throw on it, just for the purposes of this part of the discussion, and him wanting and everybody being upset because Trump allowed him at the table. But like me, who is probably way more connected, I'm actually on Twitter. I have a podcast. I've been on Timcast. I knew who Nick Fuentes was, but I did not know anything about him. Really. I've heard his name. All those kinds of, it makes sense that Trump does not know who this guy is. And so that essentially gets Trump off the hook, or should, depending on how it's reported, for that part of it. And I will move faster here through this, but I want to part of what I wanted to do here was get these very tiny details that nobody's talking about.
No,
And
they
Josh,
definitely they definitely
go ahead.
I didn't know any of that. So you're hitting on a lot of good things, man. And it's weird to me because a lot of like, the big supposed like patriots on the right, like all those big name bozos on Twitter, they're not talking about none of it. they're not saying
they're
they're
not
saying
talking
nothing,
about
dude.
any of it.
You
Yeah,
know?
and that's something that you and I commiserate about on a regular basis, which is that it seems that we have a new establishment conservative media, whether you wanted the Daily Wire, the Blaze, in combination with Fox News, and again, I like a lot of what these guys say at different points. They've done good things, but they definitely serve as gatekeepers to what the story is in any given.
Yeah, you mean the group, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The group, and I know where you're going with it, man. I know where you're going with it. Again, because Josh here is he's an anarchist, and I would just put that for my conservative friends. I am a conservative, but I'm gonna talk to everybody. But him and I would say you're a good way to establish this for somebody who may think anarchist is a bad word. Okay, for anybody who may be watching, is that an uber libertarian. You believe, just to couch this, you believe that there should be no form of government over you saying what you can and can't do, and basically that individual liberty begins and ends with the individual. Would that be a good way to surmise what you believe?
Essentially, the only thing I would throw in there is, it's not that I'm against any forms of authority. I'm against forms of people who say that they have justification to have authority over me without my consent.
And see, that's I can agree with parts of that. I think and before we dive back into what's happening here, because I know we're going to spin off on this because we've been waiting to do a conversation for a long time, is the pragmatic, not pragmatist, okay, and not pragmatism, because we've had that discussion too. But let me talk about the practical part of me. Okay, let's use the word practical. Likes what you say and likes the idea, but doesn't think it's practical. So we will get into that conversation. But yes, so moving forward, now we're going to get into the craziness that is KanYE West. I want to couch this real quick. KanYE West talks about something I wanted you to pick up on here in a minute, which is that if you become famous, that you essentially stop maturing. He said, I became, and he'll say this in a minute, and I don't want to go too much into it before, but he said, I became famous at 24, and my development kind of stopped right there because I had handlers. So just keep that in mind when you're hearing KanYE West, the 42-year-old man, talk. That just put him in the umbrella of maybe he only has a 24-year-old mind, because I think there's something to that statement that's very true. So let's move forward as we hear him. Well, this gets interesting.
Right to the heart of this anti-Semite claim that's happening.
Okay, I'm sorry. I got to stop right there.
To
go back to end what we talked about at the beginning. Tim Pool says later on in the episode that he did not want to bring up the anti-Semitic comments, right? And that he wanted to talk about the news and the dinner. But he brings up as his first headline a headline with the word anti-Semite in it. Okay? And for KanYE, who is obviously sensitive about this issue, and noticing the pregnant pause that happened, okay, I believe this hit him the wrong way, and which is why KanYE got triggered, basically, and decided to emotionally react and go right into the topic that they said they were going to try to avoid, at least for the beginning parts of the show. Because that's what he, just notice what he says. I want to get on this word anti-Semite.
Right to the heart of this anti-Semite claim that's happening. This is something, if you read the definition, it says you can't claim that there's multiple people inside of banks or in media that are all Jewish, or you're anti-Semitic. And that's the truth.
Okay. So, Josh, I think your tweet this morning hit a little bit on this in conjunction with maybe, I don't know, Dave Chappelle's monologue from SNL. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, again, you pointed out the fact that, Kanye definitely looked like he was caught off guard with it. Again, a very smart man who said that he wanted to stay away from that whole framework of anti-Semitism, to just not notice it in the claim. I mean, it just shows the intentions of what the show was really set up for. But as far as all that goes, the moment that you put that word anti-Semitism or any kind of label into that conversation, you automatically make it about some kind of in and out group. It's you can't, you know what I mean? So it's like there's nothing.
So they've drawn a boundary.
Yeah,
automatically by using
the framework. Word. Yeah, it's the framework,
okay.
And now the discussion has to remain within this framework, and that's why Kanye looked so caught off about it. You know what I mean? Because he didn't know. I mean, this is just an assumption, but to me, it looked like he was pretty baffled and caught off guard. He was, stumbling over words a little bit, like you pointed out to it. There was that long pause. His brain was like, "Wait a minute, what?" You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So,
it was kind of like he was smacked with it. Right?
Yeah, then, absolutely.
But then he just describes here, what he describes here is the same thing that if you saw Dave Chappelle's monologue that got him in trouble on SNL, was that you can't claim that there are multiple people inside a group, right, that all belong to the same group. And if you do that, it's anti-Semitic. So just let's listen to that statement again, because it gets to the whole point here. And he actually smacks him with it in a very kind of meaningful way here at the beginning. But what was it that Dave Chappelle said? Dave Chappelle said, if you got a group of Italians, it's a mob.
Yep.
If it's
a bunch of black people, it's a gang. And if it's a bunch of Jewish people, it's a conspiracy, and we can no longer talk about it.
Right. Okay. So now that was quoting. We were just quoting Dave Chappelle.
That's
all we were doing. Okay. But and that was done as a joke, which satire is a form of critique, right? Kanye is basically making that same point here. So listen.
Of this anti-Semite claim that's happening. This is something, if you read the definition, it says you can't claim that there's multiple people inside of banks or in media that are all Jewish, or you're anti-Semitic. And that's the truth. Like, it's the truth. What are we talking about? And
elaborate. What do you mean? You mean?
I'm saying, like, I've been labeled anti-Semite, right? So there's different beliefs about our bloodlines, like the documentary that KanYE posted. And in general, America has been left ignorant and history has been changed. So when we start questioning things that question the indoctrination, then you immediately get, you said debanked, or what did you say happened to you? Or
demonetized, deplatformed.
Demonized, demonetized. And what's so beautiful about this time is everyone got to see what's really been happening.
Okay. So talk to me, Josh, since you brought up labels. Do you think Kanye at least has a small point here in terms of?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
He has a very valid point. Just pointing out the fact that, a group of people who identify as a specific group, whatever that group may be, just so happen to have control over a certain amount of institutions or organizations to make the definition anti-Semitism, or whatever the definition is, to say that even though you see that these people identify as this group, they own all of these things, even though you see that, if you call it what it is, it's a bad thing. He
right.
Definitely has a valid point.
Okay. Now I want to couch this because I think Tim makes a valid point, and he'll make it in a minute. And it's where I'm lying on it, which is that it's not so much about the label or the race of the people. And that's where Kanye gets into trouble, and where he, I think, is misguided in his thinking, because I think his mind is young. I think he's been, man, let me just point this out. Anybody who has lived with the Kardashians for any period of time is not going to come out whole. All right? I mean, well, wouldn't you think? Because look what happened to
Lamar Odom.
yeah, Lamar Odom. Look what happened to Caitlyn Bruce Jenner, right? Look what happened. It seems that any male, look what happened to OJ Simpson. I mean, Rob Kardashian, both Rob Kardashians, right? Men do not seem to prosper in the orbit of Kim Kardashian's rear end. Okay. Like if they are anywhere near that, they seem to be chewed up and spit out in a manner of ways. Okay. In a manner of different ways. And KanYE West has been going through it since before the anti-Semitic comments and the comments about Jewish people and all of that, with his kids, with, there was a text message they're going to bring up about people threatening to drug him. And they're going to bring up some very interesting stuff here. But I think Tim is going to have a point that I lean more towards, that actually gets to breaking the dynamic that he set at the beginning of the conversation, which is they use the word anti-Semitic, that set a boundary. And then Tim seems to try to take it away. Rightfully so, but it seems to do a number on Kanye.
And now we can really understand. We can see that Ron Emanuel was right next to Obama, and then Jared Kushner was right next to Trump.
But so we're getting right into it, I guess, right? I was hoping to go for the news first before we got into all of this stuff. I think
that's the comment right there that Tim makes that makes me go, I've been in the room with you, brother. I know, first of all, I know how you run your process. And I know how meticulous he is with the words and the headlines that he runs, because I've seen him go through them with the small group of us. So just so everybody knows, if you go on TimcastIRL, I've sat right in the seat where Kanye is. I'm sitting there 15 minutes before. Tim's sitting there going through his stuff. He's at his computers. He's doing things. And then they just start talking about stories. There's this story. There's that story. There's this story. And Luke's writing things down. And Ian's talking. And we're shooting things back and forth. And basically getting an idea of the segments that Tim is going to take us through. Because if you've ever watched TimcastIRL, that's what he does. He goes story. He does his intro. He does first story. And then we all expound upon whatever story he brought up. And he picks that story intentionally, usually leads the headline of his show. Okay. The story that he brings, I mean, he doesn't even take just so you know how kind of like usually haphazard or last minute this process is, or at least it was for me, was he took the thumbnail picture of me 3 minutes before he posted it and 5 minutes before the show started. And that was right after we had spoken about everything that we had done the 10 minutes before that. So to get to that point is that he brought up, when he says here, I just wanted to talk about the news, but the news he brought up had the word anti-Semite at it and seat at the table. Okay. Like that, come on. I mean, so he does a number here and he tries to placate and say, well, I just wanted to talk about the dinner, or whatever. But that's not am I crazy?
No,
Josh?
you're not. You're not. That's like an arbitrary setup. Like when he says, I just want to talk about the news. Yeah. What news specifically would you like to talk about? Because there's different, this is very broad. You can't just say the news.
Well, and then
by yeah.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. And then by him doing that, right, that gives him the opening to say, well, I didn't know about that headline, the title. It must have just, I thought we were just talking about the news. Must have missed the anti-Semite thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
It gives you those ins and outs of the framework that you set up for somebody else that can't get out of it.
Right. And
You know
that
what I
is
mean?
my point, is that he knew what the first headline was going to be.
He 100%.
What he did not do probably was share the title of the headline of the Hill article with KanYE West before they started. What I'm wondering, and what I don't think we can get an answer to based upon what we've seen, is did Milo know that that was going to be the headline? Did Nick Fuentes know that that was going to be a headline? Because you got to know that for the last week or two, Milo has been in KanYE West's ear. They have literally written, Milo and Nick have literally written tweets for KanYE West, for Ye, on his Twitter account for him. Those tweets have since been deleted, right? Yesterday after the show, those the 2 or 3 tweets that people suspected were written by Milo and or Nick Fuentes were deleted after the show. So that's something to come into. But Milo and Nick have been in his ear. They flew over with him. They've been with him all week. They've been with him since the dinner, and they've been talking to him. The other part that I want people to understand is KanYE West is a multi-billionaire. How many episodes of TimcastIRL do you think KanYE West or Ye has watched? I'm going to guarantee that it's 0. And if there is an episode that he's watched, it's been the one with Milo Yiannopoulos. And that, as I talked about when I broke down that episode, is the only time in the history of Timcast that I've seen Tim not talk. And when I say not talk, I mean not talk more than his guest or the other hosts of the program. Tim runs that room, and even Ian talks about this later on. And I'll go and we might go through and find this. But even Ian and he actually described the process that I've described on this show, where he throws up his hand. You look at his hand. If you're talking, you know that it's get to the end of your point. Tim's going to talk now, right? And Ian describes later on in the show, right, that they used to butt heads when he first came on because Ian would try to talk over him, and that Tim actually sat down and had a conversation with him and said, this is not a jam session. This is I'm the conductor and you're the orchestra, right? That's what this is. And that's how Ian literally describes it. And as a classical conductor, I'm going to tell you what that means. The word from the European or the German is dirigent. It means all-encompassing controller, right? It means I am director. I am the dirigent. I am the point. I am in charge. And so that's usually the framework. But if KanYE West only watched one episode of Timcast, and that one episode was Milo Yiannopoulos talking without interruption for 2 hours, which is what happened, KanYE could have also been hit with the, wait a minute, I should be talking more here, right? I'm not, why is he interrupting me? Which is the way that normally a Timcast episode will operate, is that they all interrupt each other, right? But Tim controls the room. What you don't see is that his hand goes up, everyone shuts up. That's it. And he even describes that later. So these are just the little things that people don't know about that I think I can offer. And I know that Josh is going to, I want to get through this part of it. And Josh, I don't know how long you have, but to get to the nitty gritty of the actual philosophy and stuff behind what this is.
I think the issue is, one way to put it is you're expounding upon a localization issue that you've witnessed, right? Let me clarify. There are a handful of people that you see are Jewish in a certain place, and then you associate Judaism with the power, whereas I view that as not relevant to it. Like, yeah, you're substantially more powerful than I am, but I don't view what you're doing as an issue of Black people.
Yeah.
Okay. Josh, thoughts about that statement? Could you hear that?
Yeah, no, I definitely heard that statement. And
okay,
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty valid, you know, but the problem is people would have to be consistent with, you know, statements like that. You know, you need to have some consistency behind it. You know, he obviously, yeah. Yeah,
No,
like
go
he
ahead,
pointed
go
out, he pointed out a good fact. Like he said, yeah, you know, there are a handful of people who happen to be Jewish who own this certain thing. He's like, they do have positions of power. He's like, but you're tying it to the main bloodline of Judaism.
Right.
If KanYE is doing that, and that is how he is legitimately feeling, and you could prove that and show that he said that explicitly, fine. But if he hasn't, then you can't. And I think that's probably the problem.
Right. Well, I think he has at different points, or at least strongly like flirted with that line to the point that it's kind of obvious, or at least is kind of it's unavoidable. You know what I'm saying? When you talk about Jared Kushner and you talk about things in terms of Rahm Emanuel, and you're talking about, you know, Jews specifically, and that's where I think he makes the mistake here, and where we have to think of him as a 24-year-old mind who's been ran out on a rail by Kardashian Nation, who has been institutionalized in 2016 and has been heavily medicated and heavily handled for 20 years, right? And now he's being hit with something. And so he's dealing with it a little bit like a child or like a young man, not like a 42-year-old man who's a billionaire now, right? And he goes in to describe this, but what Tim is doing, what Tim said is correct, right? Your problem, KanYE, is not with Jews. Your problem is with people who have power trying to harm you. And you're identifying them as a race when really it's not race-based, right? But I wonder, this is what I wonder. Who was whispering in KanYE's ear leading up to his anti-Semitic comments? Well, we know that Candace Owens was, right? Candace Owens came out, like, I mean, she was with him at this ordeal right when all the anti-Semitic comments started coming out. That's the first thing. Okay. And then we know since that point, Milo Yiannopoulos and Nick Fuentes have been whispering in this guy's ear. And his language indicates that. You can hear Milo in his language. You can hear Nick Fuentes from the little bits I've done in KanYE's language, right? And it's pushed him towards identifying the problem with a race, when if he would just look at it and go, this isn't about race. This is about people in power, the establishment, which Tim would eat this up, by the way. It's about people in power, the establishment, and it's the point Tim is making, taking advantage of me because I've said something they don't like. That is a defensible notion, whether or not you agree with what KanYE said or not, right? That doesn't mean he should be debanked. I mean, if you don't want to do business with him, I get that. But if that's the standard, we've got problems, because it's kind of like Hegelianism from the left, right? It smacks of racism. Anti-Semitism here smacks of, well, anti-Semitism is racism, right? It is.
Well, see, and this is the problem, right? Is you have somebody trying to defend his position, right? And say that he is not anti-Semitic when the people who are calling him this can't even tell you what that word actually means. How can I explain myself out of a situation when you label me something that you can't even properly define? It's all arbitrary. That's what KanYE, like, granted, KanYE does come off crazy sometimes. I'm not going to say that he sounds like the most intelligent person. Me personally, I wouldn't go to KanYE for life advice or anything like that, philosophically wise. But if you really break through a lot of the noise, right, and you think about it, if a bunch of people do identify as some kind of group, and this is the label of that group, and it just so happens that those people who identify with whatever it is, whether it's government, a political party, race, whatever it is, and they are doing something within that group's best interest, and you point it out, of course they're going to use some kind of manipulation tactic to say, no, that's not what this is. That's what that is. That's all. To me, that's kind of what I hope that he's trying to say. I mean, again, I don't know KanYE like that. Not,
if
never
you're
personally
being
met
the
him.
most charitable to him,
Yes,
that's the interpretation that you're
that I
garnering
received
from
through
it.
it. Yes.
Right. Okay. So, I agree with that in terms of if I'm going to give him the utmost benefit of the doubt, right? And in that, I'm going to take into account his mental state, the mental state he's been in, the attacks he's undertaken, and what he says here, what he says next, right? But I want to point out that if you want it, my channel's called UnWokable, right? The woke did the same thing with the term racism or racist, right? They did the same thing with that, or homophobic or transphobic. It's all of these labels, and they don't take into account what the word phobic means, right? They don't take that into account, which means you're scared of something, right? And they don't even apply that to the definition. They just use these terms, right, to put you into a box to say, if you disagree with me, you are this thing, right? And so that's kind of what you're hitting on. And what James Lindsay would say about that, if you're talking about the woke, is it's Hegelianism, right? It's this kind of identity-based sleight of hand. It's latter Hegelianism, but it's Marxism. If you've got the thesis, which is racism, right, and that term and the way it's used in manipulation, you've got the antithesis to it, which could be considered anti-Semitism, right? Going the other direction, when they both mean just basically you're grouping people together and discriminating against them as a group based upon immutable characteristics. But they never define what, you're right, they never define what the word anti-Semitism means. And that's what he hits on at the beginning here. If you read the definition, and he's trying to argue the way James Lindsay, or he's doing his best. Okay, he's not doing it very well, but he's trying to define the term. And that's what makes me think, wait a minute. Has he been listening to Milo? At least these kernels of how to talk about this? And has Milo led him astray? Or has Milo tried to coach him in the right way? It seems to me, I don't know. We'll see.
But have you ever heard the term "the black vote"?
Oh,
So it's
we gotta
okay
go
to-
back real quick,
But
because this is where he
whereas I
just
in a certain
smacks
place,
Tim
witness,
Pool,
right?
I believe. He
Look,
smacks Tim Pool with
is
his
your-
own.
We're getting right into it, I guess, right? I was issue is you've witnessed, right? Let me clarify. There are a handful of people that you see are Jewish in a certain place, and then you associate Judaism with the power, whereas I view that as not relevant to it. Like,
Exactly.
yeah,
I
you're
believe that.
substantially more powerful than I am, but I don't view what you're doing as an issue of black people.
Yeah, but have you ever heard the term "the black vote"? So it's okay to put us in one net, but it's not okay for me to put them in one net.
Yeah, but I mean,
That's the basis of the hypocrisy that people have been thinking about and knowing about and realizing for decades. We were all wondering how this dam was going to break. Everybody in the country was wondering, what is the root of this hypocrisy? Why can people talk about white people a certain way? Why can't they talk about that group a certain way? And the wretched and wicked and oppressive prevailing orthodoxy of cancel culture. Well, it turned out that the one thing that was going to break the dam was the biggest star in the world, and it took the biggest star in the world to do it. And now the dam is broken.
so let me
Okay. So you got
Is
thoughts, Josh?
that's Milo. That's that guy Milo,
That's
right?
Milo. That's
Did
Milo.
you hear what he just said?
What he said? What
He
you
said
pick up on?
he said everyone keeps saying that it's not okay, that we shouldn't put people into these groups. He's basically trying. I mean, you might have to play that again, but from what I just got from that, and it was weird because he's been quiet the entire time. He hopped right on that. As soon as KanYE said, so it's okay for them to put a net on us, but it's not okay for us to group them in the same net, he jumped right on that. He's advocating that it's actually okay to put people into groups and judge them as groups. I could have heard it wrong, but
No, let's listen to it again, because I think you're right. And I have another point to that. That's a great point. Let's listen to that again and really break down, first of all, the play on play here. Because again, if you remember Milo on the last show, when he was on there, his first interview in 5 years, he had not done anything in public. He held forth and did not stop talking. during this interview, he's not said a word until this very moment. And just so you know, the setup right now of how they're actually sitting, okay? KanYE is sitting across from Tim. He's looking at him straight in the eye. Milo is directly to his right, okay? So they're right next to each other. You can't tell that from the setup of the room and the way the cameras are positioned, but that's the way they're set up. And I believe that matters here later on. But let's get back to your point of how he hopped on that situation. Now, in context of that, he hopped on because I believe KanYE was making a valid point that didn't have to be spun the way that Milo spun it. It didn't have to be spun the way that Josh just heard Milo spin it. But,
yeah, but have you ever heard the term the black vote? So it's okay to put us in one net, but it's not okay for me to put them in one net.
Yeah, but I mean,
That's the basis of the hypocrisy that people have been thinking about and knowing about and realizing for decades. We were all wondering how this dam was going to break. Everybody in the country was wondering what is the root of this hypocrisy? Why can people talk about white people a certain way? Why can't they talk about that group a certain way? And the wretched and wicked and oppressive prevailing orthodoxy of cancel culture. Well, it turned out that the one thing that was going to break the dam was the biggest star in the world, and it took the biggest star in the world to do it.
did you hear that right? Did you? Because the way I heard it, Josh, the way I heard it was that he was pointing out the hypocrisy. He said the word hypocrisy, and he was saying what he was saying is he wasn't advocating that you should. What he was saying is that it's okay to talk bad about white people, right? Or non-Jewish white people, or, men, for example. Let's take it out of race for a second. It's okay to talk bad about men or even women at given points, but not okay to talk bad about trans people in any way, shape, or form. So let's just take it out of race for a second. I think that's the point he was making. Did you hear it different?
Yeah, no, I definitely heard it wrong the first time. I thought I heard him say something, so I definitely heard it wrong. But yeah, it's crazy when you hear about all this stuff, because at the end of the day, what's being missed is, like KanYE said, so it's okay for you to put a net on us, but not us put a net on you. And what I would say is, it's not okay for people to put nets on any groups of people, bro.
Exactly.
That's what no one's seeing. It's like they're stuck in like the Matrix. They can't see it. They don't understand it. The bottom line is there's always going to be groups of men that conspire amongst each other to control other populations of people, period. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
exactly.
And it doesn't matter their race. It doesn't matter. It usually has more to do with class, or at least with income, right? To not taking it down the Marxist road, but in terms of the people with the money usually have the apparatus to try to do the controlling. But what's interesting about this situation, KanYE West is the richest black man on the planet. He's one of the richest men on the planet. And what he's describing is that there's another bifurcation here, that he's being deplatformed by a group of other rich men who are probably richer than him on the whole, but definitely have more power over institutions, right? Trying to deplatform him because of his comments. And this gets into the issue of free speech, right? Because now you have the right to say anything, and the more money you have, the more business interests you have, the more you have to lose. But you don't have the right to not suffer consequences for the things you say, right? But that I'm playing devil's advocate here, okay? So right, social consequences. So if you want to talk about if you're a man who owns a business, right? If you're a man who owns a business, and you have control of that business, you decide, right, who you do business with. Would you agree with that, Josh?
Well, of course. Absolutely.
Okay. So the person who owns JP Morgan Chase, if he doesn't like what KanYE West says, should he have the right to remove his business from KanYE West?
Yeah, it's his business. He can do whatever he chooses with it.
Right. And so that's what I'm saying, is that KanYE West said things that the owner of JP Morgan Chase didn't like, right? And so the owner of JP Morgan Chase, who's outsized influence, right, over society, when you own a bank like that, demonetized in a way KanYE West from his business interest, and did that because KanYE West, who regularly says the N-word, right, all the time, and groups other kinds of people all the time, and nobody says anything about it, did that to Jewish people, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back. It's like the intersectional hierarchy. What KanYE didn't realize is that Black people, if you want to go this intersectionality, if you want to take it on that framework, was that anti-Semitism or discrimination against Jewish people was actually a row higher on the rung in terms of victimization power than even Black people. That's kind of the argument I think they're making here. And I think that's an interesting conversation to have. And I don't know. I'll talk for a second, Josh, because
you see that I see what you're saying, but like think about this. Right now, you have a bunch of people clamoring about free speech, but then you'll hear them say that and go, "Yeah, we have free speech, but you shouldn't be able to say." Once you say free speech, but it's no longer free speech, bro. You can say whatever you please. You know what I mean? You just need to speak and make sure that you do things in your own best interest responsibly. Freedom comes with responsibility. Now, with this whole group element thing, the thing that no one is seeing, KanYE and Tim Pool are both wrong. You should not put any people in a group or a net and say that they're all responsible for the same things, but it is impossible. It is contradictory in terms to say that you can still remain a free sovereign individual while you identify as a group. You can't be a group and an individual at the same time. And that's the main problem here.
And Tim Pool, so you're saying that Tim Pool did that with the just bringing up the word anti-Semite in the news article, right?
Well, Tim Pool can't. Tim Pool, like many others, a lot of these people really can't define what these terms actually mean, which is another element and another part of this problem. But Tim Pool didn't see that when he said the Black vote, he was collectively putting a group of people and saying that they think in one specific way. And when KanYE was calling the Jews having all the power, he was doing the exact same thing. Because you cannot remain an individual and identify with groups or parties or slogans at the same time, bro. This is why it's insane, bro. It's madness, dude.
But based upon the way that everyone is reacting, Twitter sphere, mainstream media, The Blaze, Breitbart, all these people, right? They didn't get offended and don't get offended by Tim Pool referring to people, the black vote, right? They don't get offended by that. Not even Black people get offended by that because you talk about the white vote. You talk about our very nature of polling puts people into groups, whether it's educated,
everything.
Right,
yeah.
Right. It puts people into groups. And what Milo is making the point here is that some groupings are socially acceptable and some are not. Right? And what I think we also must, if we're being intellectually honest and just for the sake of discussion, Judaism is both a race of people, but also a religion. Right? You can be Jewish and not practice Judaism, right? You can be of non-Jewish descent, right? And practice Judaism and convert. So it's an interesting, I guess, if you want to use the woke or even just the critical theory intersection of identity, because it kind of combines two, right? In the parlance of the way that we discuss it. And you actually hit a bit of this, but there's another point that KanYE brings up here and kind of smacks Tim in the face with it. That I'm not sure Tim had a good response to.
And now the dam is broken.
So let me tell you my issue. I don't like identitarianism. You guys are familiar with what that is?
Well, they started it, and they've been visiting on us. We're trying to break it.
When I was asking you about running for president, you immediately said, "Well, you'd be good for the Black vote," and I said, "Is that because I'm Black?" No, not just because of that. So is that. Are you doing the same thing?
I didn't say.
Thoughts?
It's that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, man. You can't. It's what I'm saying. Politics is completely absurd. All political discussion is framed around what should be best for the rights of the individual, done by a whole bunch of political parties and groups, bro. That's why Tim doesn't see it. The black vote.
Right.
He didn't even
So
see
what-
that he was contradicting himself as he did it.
Right. Right. And so and he didn't see it that in the discussion. And you can see on Tim's face right here. Look at Tim's face. See it? He's like, oh, right.
Goddamn.
Kind of like he got sucked with, because KanYE is not a dumb person. He may be, I think, mentally less mature for various reasons than his 42 years of age. Okay. But he's also a billionaire. Okay. So don't underestimate that. And that's why you can't just slough off anything he says as well. You know, he's sick or whatever. But all these things have to be taken with equal weight, I believe. But he smacked him with a contradiction that Tim himself did not take into account based upon what you're saying, Josh, right? That from the even before the cameras came on, Tim Pool was gauging things in terms of group identities because they were talking about politics, because KanYE's supposedly running for president, which Milo is his campaign manager, which makes me go, wait a minute. Again, back to my thumbnail. Master troll. And he's using KanYE to do it. But let's see how Tim responds to this.
President, you immediately said, well, you know, you'd be good for the black vote. And I said, is that because I'm black? No, not just because of that. So is that. Are you doing the same thing?
I didn't say that was the only reason. I said it was because you're personable to the common person, and you probably would do well with the black vote. Absolutely.
Just because I'm black, there's a lot of black people that don't like me.
Of course. I think race plays a role in a lot of things. Absolutely. And I think that
My God.
I think the construct of
Okay, so just talk to me there, Josh. And you probably
Dude,
make the same point.
somebody get an ambulance for Tim Pool. Somebody called the paramedics, dude. That was the weakest display of intellectual dishonesty I've ever seen in my life. Well, no,
How
it's not
so?
just because, you said KanYE West, a black man, would be good for the black vote. Right after you said you hate identitarianism, then he calls you out on it. You backpedal and go, well, it's not just because of that. You know, I think you relate to the common man. Do you want to get more into detail on this common man, Mr. Poole? Or you want to just be honest and say, nah, man, you know what? It is because you're black. It's astounding, bro. It's astounding, bro.
You got, I mean, that is absolutely a great point. He got hit. He's coming at this with this kind of moral, and I liked him.
Superiority. Yeah, moral superiority.
Right, yes. Yep. But I'd like to go on his show again one day. So I'm not, and just being full, disclosure on that. But if I never do, that's fine. But I liked him. But he does do this where it's like he comes at things he's very intelligent. It's his show. He owns the space. Right. But he's also sitting there with a billionaire who doesn't need him. Right. Most people that come on Tim Pool's show need him in some way, shape, or form, or they're using him. KanYE could go, if KanYE dropped, if he did his own live stream right now, just right now, he would get triple the amount of viewers, on a brand new channel that Tim Pool has ever gotten. Right. He doesn't need him, but he does approach things with this kind of moral superiority. Right. And this intellectual superiority. And he got caught logically. He did. He got caught logically. Flawlessly. In a very simplistic kind of way.
Yeah.
And that's KanYE's not dumb. He's not dumb. So
of race has really been forced upon us as just something for us to be woke about and just constantly talk about.
Let's
and
go
use
back
it
there because I think he makes a good point.
I think race plays a role in a lot of things. Absolutely. And I think that's
I think the construct of race has really been forced upon us as just something for us to be woke about and just constantly talk about and use it as these like walls.
Couldn't you say the same thing about Judaism?
Well, let's look at the facts of what I'm saying.
Okay. what's wrong with what KanYE just said?
Nothing.
I agree with what he just said, that race is a construct that has been forced upon us to divide us with walls. But Tim Pool's response is, what about Judaism? Judaism is the religious bifurcation of being Jewish. You can be a practitioner of Judaism and not be of Jewish descent, right? Or Hebrew, or if you want to go back, right? Hebrew Jewish descent, right? So we've conflated the word, and what Tim did here, and I don't know if it was on purpose or not, was that KanYE was talking about race specifically, made a good comment about race. He said, race is a social construct that we use to draw walls between us. Martin Luther King would say the same thing, right? I mean, not by the color of your skin, but by the content of your character. That is the basis of that. And what Tim responds with here is a response about Judaism, which is the religious bifurcation of the Jewish identity, right? Am I wrong there? Is that the conversation you got?
Yeah, no, you're right. And not there was another thing he said too. It was briefly. He said, I could be wrong. I think it was like maybe 20 seconds back, but he said, Tim Pool said, I do think race plays a lot of roles into things.
Mm-hmm.
I could be.
Yeah,
so
again, he did say that.
Right after you said you hate identitarianism, but I do think race plays a role in a lot of things. I can't, bro. It's crazy, bro. It's insane.
Right. Yes, and yes, Melinda. And by the way, thank you, Julia, for being here. And Melinda, yes, this is a good point. I was on Tim's show and never got around to talking what I went there to talk about, which was very interesting to me. That is a point. The abuse. When I got there, first of all, I want to just address this real quick because this is something I need to address with my audience. I thought I got called to go to Tim Pool to talk about the issue of trans surgeries and OU health, right? I didn't get the call to go to Tim Pool or even the offer until that whole situation happened. And, I was in the Washington Post, I was in all this other stuff, right? And I got there, and this was the first episode. That was the first episode that Tim Pool did not talk about any of the issues that I thought I was there to talk about. We talked about Russia and foreign policy and did not talk at all about the issues. My podcast is named UnWokable, right? And we talked about no culture war issues at all. It was kind of interesting. And that just happened to be the same day that the vote happened to supposedly ban, which didn't. But yes, thank you, Melinda, for bringing that up. Okay, so moving forward, going back to what you said about, he said that race is an issue. So he did say that, and you're right. Hold on.
I think race plays a role in a lot of things, absolutely. And I think that's
I think the construct of race has really been forced upon us as just something for us to be woke about and just constantly talk about and use it as these like walls.
Could you say the same thing about Judaism?
Well, let's look at the facts of what I'm saying.
But that's my point right there. I believe Tim Pool did is there something going on in the background? Did anybody hear that? Hold on, let me see if that's you. Okay, I might mute you for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's something in your background. I'm not sure what it is. But Tim Pool smacked him not with the racial term for the Jewish identity, but the religious term after KanYE made a good statement about race being a construct that's used to divide us.
Yeah, pretty much. He pretty much was contradicting himself as he was trying to explain how he wasn't contradicting himself.
And then
well done. Well done.
Right. And then gave a really kind of tricky manipulative sleight of hand in bifurcating Jewish descent race, which is what they were talking about, into Jewish faith, which is it's interesting. It's a kind of a dual intersectional identity. You use the
Yeah,
Greek
like
word.
assimilate, like he assimilated it.
Right. It was all like a Mott Bailey.
Yeah, Martin Bailey, exactly. Lindsay talks about those all the time, dude. Yeah.
Right. It was a little bit Mott Baelish. It was like, I'm talking about race. He makes a good point about race. So he retreats to the Mott or the Bailey, I can't remember which one is which, right? And talks about the religious aspect of Jewishness or Judaism.
Yep.
It's
that just so happens. Yep. That just so happens to be practiced by some people who happen to be Jewish.
Right.
Well done. Well done,
right.
Mr. Fool. Yeah. Well done.
Right. Well, and I mean, Sammy Davis Jr. was Jewish. So, right. I mean, so it's like that's the interesting bifurcation here.
Yep.
It's a sleight of hand that nobody's picked up on, and I think should be talked
This
about.
neighborhood where they gerrymander this amount of time. So
And this
hey,
thing
I
goes
wasn't
off the
doing that. I
rails
was just gerrymandering the lawyers and the Hollywood executives and the people at the bank that debanked me and then froze my accounts. It's like we want to jump into protecting the idea that we can't put a net around something, right? But that's been my job as a producer, to take a Roy Ayers sample and put a James Brown drum and put it within a 2-minute, 3-minute song. That's the way I actually think. And that.
Okay. Since I am a music person, I want to talk about this for a second. What he describes here is actually the kind of genesis of music, or it's the way that music's put together. But what he's trying to illustrate and not doing very well, because he doesn't get to the point, is that when he said, I'm going to take this beat and I'm going to do this with the James Brown drum and I'm going to unify it into one coherent thing that you don't want to hear and I don't want you to hear, disparate from each other. Basically, is I'm going to take a group, percussion, backtrack, melody, harmony, and I'm going to unify them together and make them one coherent unit that you don't hear independent of each other. So basically what KanYE is talking about here is that he's actually going to defeat the group mentality, or that's the way he thinks, is that he's trying to defeat the group mentality. He's using music as kind of and that blends together with what he had just said about race being a construct and used to wall us off, right? I mean, does that make sense, Josh?
Yeah, well, I mean, somebody that produces music, you said you produced music, right? So if you're going to make a hit song, you first take it to account, all right, there's this certain amount of people, this group of people likes this, et cetera, right? Because you're trying to get them to purchase that product, that music that you create, right? But before he made that statement, he said they're saying that it's not okay for us to throw a net around certain people.
Right.
What kind of net is he talking about, though?
Well, I think what he's talking about, if you want to use his musical example, is let's use the orchestra, right? You've got the strings, you've got the woodwinds, you've got the brass, you've got the percussion, right? And they are all disparate within the orchestra, but it is all one orchestra. I think that's what he's trying to say. But you're right. He does say that he's speaking out of two ends of his mouth. KanYE is speaking out of two ends of his mouth. But it's hard because he knows that black people get lumped into one group, right? And what his point is that you can't do the same thing with Jewish people. That is his point. And that is a hypocritical kind of statement, right? But it's also how you couch that statement. It's a bad trick, man. We're if you really dissect this is bad. And you're right, Josh. I mean, you're right. I mean, it's the most, what is it that you say about the individual and being the minority?
Well, I mean, the individual cannot claim to be a sovereign individual while identifying with the group at the same time. You can't you can't pledge allegiance to a group and say that you want to be a member of this group and get all the perks and the benefits of whatever's in that group's best interest and then claim to still be an individual. And this is what is happening nonstop. It's just a bunch of it's like the Hegelian dialect. It's just nothing but a constant switch of different groups
Right.
trying to find
And
reasons and
against each other.
trying to find reasons and justifications for taking or oppressing or whatever the case may be to other groups.
Hey guys, if you're watching me on Facebook, jump over to YouTube. Some of you, I can't see your names, so I'm not hiding names or anything. But this is an interesting point. He's talking about target marketing, which is, again, how marketing and PR works. This is what white people like. This is what men like. This is what women like. This is what kids like, right? So he's talking about something that exists in society, whether we like it or not, right? It is something that it's pervasive down to the way that we consume goods, right?
Yes.
And
but it should never be conflated to political policies and legislation based upon how people should have to live their lives. That should not be looked through from a marketing strategic lens. You're not supposed to sell people. See, you can't sell people rights and freedoms and put them in nets and then blame whatever group is responsible for them not having them. It's insane.
Right, which is the actual definition of the word identitarianism, right? Yep. It's government through identity. It's not just racism, right? It's government through identity, right? That's why I call the woke Marxist identitarians, because they group everything based upon identity, and then they govern based upon that philosophy. They actually implant it into government. You could say the same thing about the Jim Crow South. They were white identitarians, right? Because they built actual laws around identity.
Yes.
And so,
yes.
Right.
Yes, you
right.
could say that, but couldn't you also say that, if a bunch of people came together as a certain group, right? Let's call them the elites, whatever it is, right? And they're a member of this group and they have a certain name that they call each other. Isn't that identity? If you had one of the members of that group and you said, hey, are you a part of that group? That's identity, correct?
Yeah.
Government's an identity. Government. What is government? It has to be a group of men somewhere.
Right.
Like,
well, I mean, you can even talk about it. Well, I'm an OU grad, or I'm a Yale grad, or I mean, it's always. But this is why and you and I will have more discussions beyond this one. Other times you're going to come on the channel, I know, because men are inherently tribal. It's part of their nature. It's evolutionary, and you're going to group into groups, and that means that you're always going to have large groups and small groups, and you're going to have people that put you into groups, and you are going to put yourself into groups, right? And whether that's your family as the family unit, whether it's your extended family, whether it's your state, your city, your local, like that is part of the way that humans have existed since the beginning of humanity, right? And so that's where it's like the idea of anarchism as you describe it to me, right, is really good on paper. You know what I'm saying? It's really good to have that bifurcation down to the individual and have that be the sovereign unit, which is what we should always strive for, I believe. But I don't necessarily believe it's attainable. You know
you brought up a good point, though. You're correct when you say that, all through human history, there's been documentation of people coming together into groups. That's a fair point. But isn't it also possible that people have voluntarily come together into groups, for their own mutual benefit voluntarily? If somebody if somebody has some goods that I need and I have an idea that could, possibly increase the production of those goods, we both meet voluntarily. We politic back and forth a little bit, right? Well, all right, how about you throw me and then as a group, we make the money. And whenever I'm done with that deal, I'm out of there. So this whole claim and notion that people have always been tribal, based upon, but politics, governments, religions, it's not necessarily like that's the problem.
But evolutionarily, I don't think you're right, because going back civilizations, going back to Cro-Magnon man, when there was not the higher order thinking of politics, right? They would still group based upon what? The way they looked. Tribes. They would group based upon who was their mother or father. They would group. I mean, lions do this. Animals do this. This is part of natural law for most mammalian species, right? It's a instinctual basis of things that has graduated to human thought, which is higher order thinking, that manifests itself in politics, because we don't run around in different colored tunics anymore, you know, in different parts of the land with our tribe fighting the other tribe. We do that, you know, on the internet over YouTube, right? But that is not to say, okay, if you want to take it to Christianity, the reason why I'm a Christian is because I know for a fact what Christ teaches me, right? Just to take it to a religious standpoint, what Christ teaches me is that I cannot attain perfection, but it's the striving for that perfection that makes my faith worthwhile, because it makes me a better person, or it makes me, it's a set of values that I know I can never fully achieve because I am imperfect. But my striving for that perfection, right, is the point. And so when you're talking about trying to keep liberty down to the basis of always striving for something weird here. Can you all hear me better there? Hold on a
Yeah,
second.
I can hear you, Claire.
Well, I'm getting points that I'm sounding muffled. Hold on. Can you hear me better there, Sour Kiwi? Yeah, there's something weird happening with it, and it's not. That's better. Does it happen when I turn him back on? Let me see that. Unmute yourself, Josh.
Can you hear it?
Is there a muffle now? Oh, there
No,
it's
I
back.
didn't hear him off. I'm just going to drain the anaconda real quick.
Okay, yeah, you go do that. I'll mute you. Okay. So yeah, there's something weird happening. Maybe it's Putin. Anyway, to get to the point is that, and we're going to move on with the video because I want to finish that. And I kind of forgot where I was with the sound issues. Make sure that everybody can hear. Is that we always want to strive for as much individual liberty as possible within a system that is built off the instinctual need to tribe up. You know what I mean? So it's although our instinct brings us to, you know, maybe wanting to punch somebody who we see as a threat instantaneously, as a higher order thinking, we want to try to defeat that and see if we can't be diplomatic about it before it comes to blows, right? So although our instinctual nature is to tribe up and get groups bigger and bigger and bigger and separate each other and segregate each other and see each other as tribes, our goal should be, even though we may not always attain it, is to strive for the individual liberty and freedom of the individual first, and always move towards that direction, even if we cannot attain it. And so I think that's kind of what we're getting at here. So we'll move on here. This is where it gets weird. So he's getting into the weeds now. Oh, you can't hear it?
We're going to not call them Yeezys
I'm
anymore.
sorry, guys. Hold
So
on.
this is what I was already fighting Adidas for. So I'm fighting Gap. Get out of Gap. It was by my own online banging
All right.
on some deal flow. Wrong. And now is round to take, you know, a Roy Ayers sample and put a James Brown drum and put it within a two
Gonna let it
minute,
play for a minute.
3 minute
Can y'all
song.
hear it now?
That's the way I actually think, and that's the way I talk. And now this morning, I found out that they were trying to put me in prison because what they did was I moved $140 million into JP Morgan. And I said, I want to talk to Jamie Dimon. Like, look at me. I'm just going in naive, you know, multi-billionaire. Like, man,
Super
maybe
chats are
Jamie
open, guys, by
Dimon
the
will
way.
let
Just
me in
reminder.
on some deal flow. Wrong. And I'm just like banging my hands like, I want to meet with Jamie. And I start complaining online. And then they debank me for complaining. And so I'm about to get debanked. They're like, you need to go to Trump's, the bank, AXO, whatever, you got to go. And I'm like, I've been trying to buy my own bank for the longest. And then we figured out how to get my own bank. It's like 50 million, 75 million. So I'm about to buy my own bank. But then as you're about to take the money out, here comes Adidas with a $275 million bill for marketing funds that they agreed upon. Because I said to them, hey, I'm the marketing, give me the marketing fund, which proves by the response they got when they, you know, stole the designs and said, we're going to not call them Yeezys anymore. So this is what I was already fighting Adidas for. So I'm fighting Gap, get out of Gap, fighting Adidas. And then I deal with this little bit of noise from, you know, Zionism from the fashion world, where they use this plant named Gabby, who's obviously like some kind of CIA agent, knows nothing about fashion. This is a certain thing. When someone can't dress, you know that they're not like a fashion person.
Full
they're
Kanye.
just there as like the society, like the control that they try to use with celebrities, which has now been broken, right? Because you know where it broke. Okay. I want to get on like LeBron in a second, but I'm going to come back to this and just talk about this morning where, you know, I'm not going to mention her name because she's a nice lady, but someone at Cohen Resnick tells me, and I tell all of my finance people, never use the term a lot. But they said, okay, you're going to have to pay a lot of taxes. And that made me feel like they're just like waiting, like we finally got him. We finally can put him in jail. And I was like, can I still run for president in jail? I found out I could. So I was like, okay, that's fine then. It'll be okay.
But if you were Jeffrey Epstein, they would.
Okay, so by the way, this is where he goes off the rails a little bit, but what he's describing, what he's actually describing is independent of race, independent of Judaism. He's talking about the people in companies, Gap, Adidas, JP Morgan Chase. He's talking about powerful people who are taking advantage of him and or deplatforming him. You know what I mean? And he's directly identifying them not by race or color or religion. He's saying these companies and the people within them. And basically, he was to get out of that, he was gonna just buy his own bank, which I think is insane. It's like, oh, it's at $50 or $75 million. I'll just buy my own bank. I'm like, okay.
Vintage Kanye. Listen,
Right.
I'm upset. I'm upset because he said he was about to get in on LeBron, and Tim Pool couldn't give us another 10 minutes. You couldn't make it last 10 more minutes. Like, oh my goodness, bro.
Yeah.
So disgusting.
Yeah. So now you got to watch him shut down. You got to watch him shut down Luke here.
They wouldn't touch your bank account. They would allow you to break the rules, regulations, just like JP Morgan and Chase did, just like Deutsche Bank did. So there is an issue to bring up with that.
Go back to the
Okay,
beginning of that
jail, I
statement
found out I
'cause
could.
it's
So I was like, okay, that's fine then. It'll be okay.
But if you were Jeffrey Epstein, they wouldn't touch your bank account. They would allow you to break the rules, regulations, just like JP Morgan and Chase did, just like Deutsche Bank did. So there is an issue to bring up with that. But when it comes to the race stuff, I think this is an important discussion to have because
I have to complete this thought. You guys got to.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, because I'm talking about literally finding out that they were trying to put me in prison this morning. Watch this. So
this morning. So he got faced with a situation the morning of this interview. Apparently, he doesn't describe it well, so I don't know how legitimate it is. But he feels that the morning of this interview, this is at 7 p.m., 8 p.m. or whatever, that there were people trying to put him in jail. And keep in mind, Milo Yiannopoulos and Nick Fuentes have been with him on a nearly constant basis since last week. Just saying. Just saying.
This morning.
Yes. So not come to my house this morning, but I found out, okay, so they put a $75 million hold on 4 of my accounts. And then they said, you owe a lot of taxes. Took me like 6 hours to find out how much a lot was. They said, well, around $50 million. Now I'm going to different CFOs like, okay, so would this be tax evasion? Because I'm obviously not the most financially literate person on the planet. I was just a child, basically. Like,
Listen.
when you become famous, you stop growing at that point. I became famous at age 24, and I had handlers around. I had my mom around, different things. And it was always like you go from one handler to the next handler to the next handler. So now I get to actually learn how to run a company. I get to learn how to, to count. Really, I was like Pablo in a movie. It was like I didn't even know where to put the money, like literally making $300 million cash, but you're just like a high-priced, we're not going to use the S word just because it's just like too passe to use it. But it's like next year I was supposed to make $500 million.
Okay, so I just want to talk about what he just said there. That's the point I brought up earlier, was that I think he makes a very true statement. You saw this with Britney Spears. You see this with child stars. You see this, anybody who's come up in the limelight, right? And that when they become famous, that they just stop growing. They don't mature after that, because you then have this whole apparatus of handlers who are going to come suckle on the teat of your success. Saw this with Britney Spears, right? That stunt your growth, because then they start taking care of things for you, right? Because he's the artist, you go be the artist, we'll take care of all of your business interests, right? And he's 42 years old. He got famous at 24. What he's saying is that he didn't know how he made the $1 billion he has. He's just now learning about it because people are starting to jump ship. So he's having to actually learn how to be a billionaire after having already been a billionaire, after having been a millionaire. He didn't know. And this sounds strangely familiar, like what they want kids to be doing in education now, is they want to infantilize them, right? They can't read. They can't do their own math. They can't tie their own shoe. They can't fix their own toilet. They can't, fix their own car. They've got to rely on somebody for something every single time they do something. If it breaks, they got to buy a new one. They can't fix it. And it sounds to me very much like what KanYE is describing here, just at a different level. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, man, I would say you hit the nail on the head, but it's crazy because what you just described is pretty much, I hate to do this, but it's government. You said it, he has handlers, right? People taking care of him. Don't worry about this, right? He was infant, right? Certain things that always were taken care of him, taken care of for him.
Right.
That's government. That's what government is. Your handlers.
Right.
We do this for you, whether you like it or not. That's what that's. So you're an anarchist and you don't know it yet. I'm telling you, bro.
No. See, because here's the thing. I believe in moderation. I believe that there is moving one direction too far either way presents dangers that aren't necessarily needed. And if you can find the right balance between a government and or a municipality, right? Usually the more local, the better, the smaller, the better, right? Then that's where I think the last 200 years have proven man can thrive the best, is when you find Western society was built off of a imperfect yet continuously adjusting balance of individual liberty and government, right? You got us all the way up through the 1776, right? Just for an example, on a very slow trajectory towards what Western society had become under the system of kings and monarchs and the feudal system and serfs and the caste system, so to speak. And then that broke to the extent that it ever has in history, to more focus downward towards the individual liberty of those around them in a new world, right? Where you had vast amounts of land and nobody around you. And over the course of that 200 some odd years since then, under the kind of weight and pressure of individual liberty against government, right? Of forms of government, small, bigger, biggest, man went from, no electricity to now I'm talking to you on a screen across airwaves and looking at you at the same time. That when you look at that progression compared to the hundreds of thousands of years before that into the last 200 years, there's been quite a big jump in the pursuit of the ability of people to pursue happiness and be comfortable or more comfortable or live longer, or all of these values you can say make us a good society. And that has come from a balance of government, at least at a large point, trying to focus on constantly the individual liberty and push that direction. Now, what I think we're seeing is a liberty system that's really trying to push us away from individual liberty, more towards the top down, what James Lindsay talks about, communism, right? Global kind of communism, fascism, and a government system that is not focused on individual liberty, that is actually willing to sacrifice the individual for the power of the state. That's where we're going now, because we've slowly been trickling that direction, and I think Josh would agree with that, right? And I think
I definitely I definitely agree with all of that, 100%. But think about this, right? How can minority groups or the individual have any kind of control over his life when everything that is determined in his society is determined by the majority ballot? If every law that I have to abide by is determined by majority ballots, then where is the individual at? This is what it's a contradiction. It's a whopping contradiction that a lot of people do see sometimes, and they don't want to. The bottom line is this, right? Government can interpret the laws however they wish. The Supreme Court interprets that Constitution however it wants to. The government will never investigate itself, and the government will never restrict itself. It's never going to do that. like everything we have technologically wise, food wise, human beings have done that on their own without the intervention of government, sometimes with government regulations and intervention. Human beings come together all the time for the mutual benefit of other human beings. They don't have to identify with any groups. Government is more in terms of safety. People can't envision a world without government. They're like, people are barbaric. People would murder. It's happening right now.
Yeah, it is.
And to KanYE's point about being infants, right? Do people seem more dependable now? Do people seem more self-sufficient in society around you right now? Do they seem more stable?
No,
absolutely not. And that's government.
But hold on. I would say 50 years ago, it was a different story. I would say even as recent as 20 years ago was a different story. Is that now we've shifted into, I think it really began in the Great Society and in the New Deal, right? When you talk about the massive social programs, right? The socialization of the United States, little by slowly. And that has led to where we are now. But again, all of American history, and I'm just going to talk about America for a second, all of American history up to that point led us to the greatest generation, which saved the world. I mean, it just saved the world. They saved the world. And that was done through government. And yes, it was government that they had to fight. I agree. But that's my point, is that there's always going to be bad actors. And so, and I really, we need to do another podcast because I want to get into this with you, but I want to get through the video. But I think it goes to the point, and I knew we were going to do this when I asked you to be on, so that's okay. And everybody seems to be okay with it. But we are going to do more of these because I think, just like I thought we would, we're going to have good conversations, and I think we're good to play off each other. But I think that it's all about balance, and what KanYE is talking about here is that he's being attacked by people that have more power than he does. Maybe not more money, but more power. And he's just now trying to figure out, wait a minute, I have all this money, but how do I buy the power? Right? The guy with JP Morgan Chase that owns that bank has more power than me. So what do? I need to buy a bank, right? The guy with Twitter that knocked me off Twitter had more power than me. So what do I need to do? I'm going to buy Parler, right? That's Elon Musk has figured that out too, right? It's like, that money can only buy power if you use it to buy power. And that you do that by buying institutions. You know what I mean? And that are used by the common person, that affect the common man on an individual level. And Josh, that's not government. Corporations aren't government. Eventually things are going to get big enough, but guess what? Corporations can buy armies. Corporations can pay for schools. Corporations can, and so that's why when you have that kind of a mass of power in singular hands, right? That's where a corporate government elected by the people up to this point, at least, hopefully still right now, maybe not so much, but through American history has been able to check that when necessary, right? It's been able to check it because capitalism, free markets mean that some people are going to do it really well. KanYE West is going to make better music than UnWokable, right? Why? Because he's better at it than me. He's going to be the Michael Jordan of making music. I can't stop him, nor do I want to, right? Because I like his music. But that means he's going to get an outside portion of the pie, and he can buy his own bank, and I can't buy my own, $20 bill. You know what I mean? It's like, I can't, but that's always going to be a part of the human existence. And so we have to institutionalize some sort of safeguards against those who have all and those who do not. And that's what the American system up to this point has largely done better than any other system in all of human history. And I don't believe, my personal opinion, that we would be where we are today if we didn't have that. I think we would be worse off. That's hypothetical. We don't know. Maybe we wouldn't. Maybe you'd be right. Maybe we'd all be living like kings. You know what I mean? I don't know. But it's better for more people. So I don't know. I'll let you have the last word on that subject, and we'll finish.
Yeah, because I actually got to go pick up my kids a little bit. But I will say this, right? And I'm glad you brought up the corporations and things like that, right? Now, you said we had a government that kept the global, the corporations from becoming too powerful. And oftentimes I hear that argument a lot, right? But the corporations bribe the politician. And when you bribe somebody, you're bribing that which is more powerful than you. So the government is what enables corporations to become mega corporations. They don't just do it on their own. And what we have in the United States, it never really was full-fledged capitalism. It's always been kind of regulated. You have to do certain things in order to even be able to purchase certain things or open up certain businesses. So government is what enables these mega corporations to become mega corporations. The only reason why we've gotten to a point where we think that corporations hold the power is because now it's becoming more illuminated and we can see clearly for what it is.
Yeah, but I would counter that with just saying that monarchies were a form of corporations. They were that was kind of that kind of system. But we are going to get into this, and I know you've got to go, and I want to finish the video because I do have a point. And I know maybe somebody who's been watching for 2 hours now wants to hear my point, but it's that Milo, I believe, orchestrated all of this. I really do. So Josh, you got to go.
Yeah, man. But thank you for having me on, brother. I'm trying to get my setup like yours. I'm loving it, man. I got to get headphones and all that, dude. This,
Yeah, dude,
this
you know,
iPad thing's ridiculous, but thank you, man. I
Hey.
appreciate it for sure.
I'm going to have you back on. We're gonna, like I said, I want to try to set up something regular with you because I knew we would have good back and forth on these things. So let's talk. All right. I'll see you soon,
All right,
brother.
brother. Hey, take it easy, man.
Yep. All right. So we're gonna move through the rest of the video here, and let me make sure he's. All right. We're gonna move through the rest of the video so you can get to my point and the walkout.
And royalties, and like no one needs this amount of money. But when I would work on homeless shelters and ideas, I'd have a contractor, we won't say what race, and they'd be tearing down the contracts.
That's what
it's all
gets him.
about
That's not good.
position. It's not about the amount of money that you have. And to come in here, I feel like it's a setup to be like defending. I'm not gonna go through another, like I'm literally gonna walk the F off the show if I'm sitting up here having a talk about, you can't say that it was Jewish people that did it when every sensible person knows that. I mean, Jon Stewart knows what happened to me, and they took it too far. It was like American History X. Like my head was on the side of the curve, and the exact people that I called out kicked my head. We found out that my trainer was a MK Ultra Canadian.
This is actually legitimate. This is weird.
intelligence. Yeah.
He worked in the defense research and development in the Canadian military.
Yeah, that's a good question. This is I think the source of the thing. Our live entertainment. Thanks for guys. Super chats are open. I would appreciate it if you want to jump in. I'll of course show your stuff. But he uses the word they, and KanYE, I think, is getting himself in trouble with a category error. That he has identified every person that he has a problem with as being of Jewish descent or Jewish religion. And what he's really mad at is people that may have less money than him, but more power. That's what he's mad at. And that's where Tim was right at the beginning, was that the people he's upset with, right, are not, it's not about whether they're Jewish or black or Asian or white, or it doesn't matter. It's that they're taking advantage of him and punishing him because despite his billions of dollars, they have more power than him because he has a lot of money, but no institutional control. And he's remedying that situation, but it's coming about hard, and he's not doing. And Milo and these guys have literally grabbed him, knowing that he's not as stable as he should be, that he's gone through a very hard period in his life over the last really 10 years. But especially in the last 8, and especially in the last 3, that he is easily manipulated by professional manipulators. And if you want to, you may like Milo, you may not. He's brilliant, but he's a manipulator. That's what trolls do. They manipulate. And KanYE has identified the problem, but misidentified the source in a very superficial way. He's literally naming a group of people that if he were just to say, if he were to change his entire language from the beginning and say, these rich, elite people are trying to knock me down and cancel me, he would be preaching what a lot of the populist movement is, right? That's what he would be doing. So it's just, he's committing a category error. But this point that he's making here is he had a trainer that worked for the Canadian government, like intelligence officers, that threatened to drug him with lithium to the point that he wouldn't be able to recognize his own children. He posted that on the internet, a text message. So there's a case to be made that he's had people around him in various positions in his daily life that have been manipulating and driving him towards a certain level of mental instability. And this does happen, especially if the people around you see that you could be a political benefit in the future, that you could be a monetary benefit in the future, that if you are a talented person, they could just cash cow you into being their free ride or their weapon to change culture in a certain direction. If KanYE West has a claim to anything, it is that he is a cultural icon in a very real sense of the word. Right? And it's an interesting point. So that's what they're talking about here is his trainer. Listen to this real quick.
They're essentially working on psyops
Who's
in
this
the
guy?
Canadian military. This is Harley Pasternak.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, look, they tried to medicate me. I was exhausted. They wrongly diagnosed me. And they when I asked them, how much lithium did you want to put me on exactly? It took them 4 days to answer because they were embarrassed about the amount, right? And I refused to take this, right? You understand that if I had taken the medication, I would not be here, and it would have been, he was deeply troubled. We miss him. We love his music, though.
Well, they would have Britney Spears too. I mean, look at
They
what
would have
look-
Michael Jackson.
or worse, yeah.
So
Look at what they did. Look at what they did to Britney. When she went in, she was tired, she was exhausted, she was in a bad way. But 10 years of that medication wrecked her brain. You can see it now.
Yeah.
You can see there's not much
This
of
is a
her
valid
left.
point.
you mentioned Pasternak was the name.
Yes, Harley Pasternak. That's the text message that you
Yes.
posted that we were talking about before.
Here's
That's the lobotomy
look,
threat. You know?
Yeah.
before the show, obviously, I'm getting a bunch of messages from people. People are hitting me up and they're like, you shouldn't host them. They're anti-Semitic. They're white supremacists. They're racist. I do find it funny or weird or whatever that, Nick, they call you a white supremacist. You're here working with or for, one of the most powerful black men, one of the wealthiest and most famous. But a lot of people were saying on the right specifically, don't platform them. And I said, well, I want to understand what they're thinking and why they're thinking it. They're involved in what may be the biggest news story of the past week. And we have an opportunity to sit down and talk.
Because the red media controls both sides. It just said it as simple as possible. Jared Kushner was next to Trump. Ron Emanuel was next to Obama.
But see,
since 1940.
See,
go ahead.
I was going to say, isn't that an issue
this-
of these individuals?
this is
like
the problem.
you're extracting.
And Tim makes a good point here, but that's the point, is that it's not about whether Jared Kushner and Rahm Emanuel are Jews. It's about, I agree with him that there is a regime that controls both sides of the media spectrum, and they work together more than we would like to think. And they play off dividing us over political issues to attain goals. That it's plainly visible. But Kanye or Ye takes this to the step of it being an identity issue, that even if he has a valid point about the hypocrisy of what you can say about one group or another, which I think is a worthy exploration and something to be talked about, but by probably somebody more articulate than KanYE West. That's the point. He's got to be, it's why Trump wasn't the best person to fight against critical race theory. He didn't know how to describe it. He didn't have the power. This is the case for Ron DeSantis. And again, I don't like the manipulation that's happening on that end, where it's like everybody's pro DeSantis and anti-Trump because that's what the people high atop the thing have decided, right? I hate that, but it's there's a point to Kanye is not the person to make this argument because he doesn't articulate it well, and he drops back into kind of an emotional reaction or a reflex into just, oh, well, it's this person's got this name, this person's got this name, right? It's a matter of labels, and that's what gets him in trouble. And that's really dangerous because now it's him making the argument that could be beneficial to make without the proper language to make it. Makes it harder for people who might be able to make it. You know what I'm saying? Like it makes it harder. So it's and I'll look more into what Ye said, and again, my point of all of this is actually that KanYE West is being taken advantage of, I believe, He's whether he said wrong things or not, and some of the things I've heard, not great. Some of the things he's saying here, not great at all. But he's surrounded right now, at this very moment, by 3 people who are more articulate than him, who have more experience in the space, literally and figuratively, who manipulate people and language in subtle ways for a living, who have made themselves famous off of that kind of spin, let's use that word. And they do not have his best interest at heart. And I believe Milo Yiannopoulos, for sure, orchestrated that. I think he orchestrated the whole sit down with Trump. And I think they admitted to it at the beginning of the conversation. Milo reached out to and I'm blanking on the name, the guy who just got sued for $1 trillion. Can't believe I forgot his name. And he reached out to his producer saying that he wanted to talk to KanYE West. And then Milo got KanYE hooked up with Fuentes. KanYE already had a dinner set with Trump, invited them to come with him. And Trump sat down with at least one person who's Nick Fuentes he didn't know. And you see Milo Yiannopoulos, like the 3-ring circus master. I mean, just like it's insane. But it's not near out of the realm of possibility, especially when you know that Cassandra TimcastNews.com's editor-in-chief was involved somewhat in, if not at the actual dinner, or connecting people. So, and do you know how much money Tim Pool made off of this 20 minutes of video? And if my short interaction with him as a person and what I viewed from him as a business person from afar, the man knows how to make money. He's been doing this for a long time and he's really good at it. And what I've also learned just in business in general, nothing really comes about as far as chance. You may get lucky once in a blue moon. But Tim Pool has made his fortune and his company by helping shape the narrative, not just by reacting to it. And Milo was just on the show like a month ago for the first show he's been on in 5 years. And I'm not saying it did happen or didn't happen. I'm just telling you what I'm observing. And now we're going into the actual removal.
I'm going to order with the last of my money that's available in a different account. I'm going to order a PJ before I sit and have another Lex Friedman setup conversation. When I'm literally they're trying to put me in jail for my opinion.
But
I'm not going to have that opinion. I don't care about people. Those are bots that are trying to tell you. We realize, look at Pence. He sold Trump out. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I would have never wanted to do anything that hurt Trump. I'm on Trump's side. Trump.
Does anybody know what he meant by order a PJ there? I'll go back. I haven't figured that out yet. And I would like to know what he meant by order a PJ before I come in and sit down at another Lex Friedman type conversation.
Last of my money that's available in a different account. I'm going to order a PJ before I sit and have another Lex Friedman setup conversation. When I'm literally they're trying to put me in jail for my opinion.
But
I'm not going to have that opinion. I don't care about people. Those are bots that are trying to tell you. We realize, look at Pence. He sold Trump out. You get what I'm saying? It's like I would have never wanted to do anything that hurt Trump. I'm on Trump's side. Trump said things that hurt me. He lied about me, but I mean, he's known for lying. And when people used to tell me that, you know, he's a liar, it's like, you know, I went into the trenches for Trump. That's another conversation. There was no one in my position that wore that hat. And all of my surroundings exhausted me. It was like death by 1,000 questions. I know I'm jumping to another thing, but what I'm saying is I know you got a rep for your people online, but it's you got a person in real life that I'm not with it, bro. I lost the money for the freedom of speech. And that's what makes me the only American that we know that really deserves to run the country, because everyone else, your boy DeSantis, Trump, whoever they raise and impeach.
Right now, this is the primary proof that Milo and Fuentes are latching on to the billionaire to grift and to troll, because no one in their right mind, nobody, and actually Tim and his cast play into this later on in the show, where they talk about his candidacy being a legitimate thing. It's not. It never would be, but they talk about it as if it is, or if it could be, and it's not. It never would be. Not now. Maybe if we've dumbed down, I think we got to maybe 10 years before we get to that level of idiocracy, but it's not right now. Not in this coming election. It's not a real thing. But look at Nick Fuentes nodding in approval to, you know, Kanye's words about why he thinks he should be the next president. They're affirming a delusion. If Timcast treats Kanye, now they may be doing it for business reasons. Oh, they're all doing it for business reasons because he's a billionaire, and having him on your channel makes you buku dollars. It's the biggest single guest that Tim Pool's ever had, maybe ever will have. But this is a person, and he believes that he should be and could be and will the next president. And you have two professional trolls and a professional commentator in Tim Pool affirming that at different levels.
Only American that we know that really deserves to run the country, because everyone else, your boy DeSantis, Trump, whoever they raise in a petri dish over on the Democrat side is going to play the game.
Look,
and
here's what I was trying to get to. You went right into the anti-Semite thing. I think it's something that should be talked about, but if you start bringing this up, you're going to ask my opinion on it. I'm going to
gaslighting. Tim brought up the anti-Semite issue in the headline of the news story. It had the word anti-Semite in it. That's fact. I mean, you can go back and view it. Again, I liked him. I would say this to his face if I were sitting in front of him, as I've done before. He brought up the issue in the headline of the story, of the news story that he claims to have wanted to talk about. That it's a fact. And right now he's saying that he did the opposite. Listen,
the game.
Look,
and
here's what I was trying to get to. You went right into the anti-Semite thing. I think it's something that should be talked about, but if you start bringing this up, you're going to ask my opinion on it. I'm going to disagree with you.
I didn't ask your opinion on it. You jumped into it.
But
I don't care about your opinion. I like your opinion on how we win an election, but I don't care about anybody's opinion, bro. I lost. They tried to put me in jail. They blocked $2 billion I had. Like, but I told Farrakhan, I said, look, is it anti-Semitic for me to say his name out loud? Like, I told
minister.
Yeah, the minister. Like I told
Obama met with him too.
Oh, he was. Yeah, I mean the Jewish people allowed Obama to meet with the minister.
That's where he gets himself in trouble.
Farrakhan said, "Well, did he have the money? The contract for the next 4 years, if I hadn't done anything, would have been $500 million a year for 4 years. What I was fighting for was the IP, so my children could, you know, I'm sorry, just sometimes I think about 7 thoughts at one time, because anything I see, I come up with like 7 answers to it and then just choose what it is. But the thing is, when I said my children, the reason why my brain kind of blocked, because it's like God is saying, you know, your children are going to be okay. Baby mama's got money, right? God is using me. He's breaking me down, removing all of the, richest person, all of this, so I can serve him. And the more and more those things are taken away from me, the more I can be empty and be a vessel and be able to be used. And right now it's like, you're not going to take, if we can't, you're not going to take my pain away, right? The Jewish people say, it's the Holocaust, this happened, and you can't say anything about it. We can't take their pain away. No one's going to denounce the fact that they tried to lock me up. That's what, because every time I'm just holding stride, and it's like, I thought I was more Malcolm X, but I find out I'm more MLK, because as I'm getting hosed down every day by the press and financially, I'm just standing there. And when I found out that they tried to put me in jail, it was like a dog was biting my arm, and I almost shed a tear, almost, but I still walked in stride through it. Yeah.
I think they've been extremely unfair to you.
Who was they though? We can't say who they is,
corporate
can we?
press. I'm not using I don't use the word as the way I guess you guys use. I'm talking.
It is
about
them though, isn't it? I mean, because
No.
and because when you think about it, consider it. In 2018.
What do you mean it's not?
What do I mean? Like, okay, so how about, are you leaving?
And this is where he walks out.
Are you afraid of the press?
He's gone. I'll say it right now. You got
Okay. So, and then Milo leaves. And this is my whole point of my cast today. That when you have professional narrative setters who have a relationship independent, longer lasting than the man that they're focusing on, and then really break down the language used, how it's used, the order of operations, the things that people don't notice. I don't know how much of it was intentional on Tim's part. I think the evidence is pretty clear that it's been intentional by Milo's part. And I think it won't be long, Milo being Milo, that he will cop to that. And they when you have these people that manipulate language in their own way for a living and have made their fortunes and their reputations in doing that, surround somebody who, although brilliant in his own way, admitted that he was stunted in terms of what he knows about things or what he's learned at the age of 24, because, which is documentable, when you get a bunch of money, you get handlers that insulate you from what it is, from you doing the tasks that take away from what it is that you do to make the money. So the moral of the story is that Milo Yiannopoulos is the master troll here. He said several times that he was going to get revenge on Trump. He said that he was going to get revenge on the Republican Party and those who canceled him. He said on Timcast, when he was there, when he did his episode, that people are in the mood for revenge. he knew, because he's a brilliant individual, that bringing Nick Fuentes to Donald Trump, which he admitted that he orchestrated in the room at the beginning of the episode, he knew that bringing Nick Fuentes to Trump was going to hurt him. And he did that thing. And the way that Tim set this up by claiming that he didn't bring up the anti-Semitism issue, while at the same time, the first thing he brought up was this headline. Pence says Trump should apologize, wrong to give anti-Semite a seat at the table. Who was at the table that they're referring to? Who's been called an anti-Semite? Tim picked the story. He has plausible deniability because he just read the headline. But, I mean, just listen to him read the words.
It's wrong to give anti-Semite a seat at the table. This, of Trump should apologize. It's wrong to give anti-Semite a seat at the table. Pence says Trump should apologize. It's wrong to give anti-Semite a seat at the table. Pence says Trump should apologize. It's wrong to give anti-Semite a seat at the table.
And then notice the pregnant pause.
This, of course, is related to a dinner that
From
happened,
KanYE.
and I was wrong a little on the details. So a dinner happened. Nick, you were there. Ye, you were there. I just want to start off by, how did this dinner come to happen, and what happened?
Pregnant pause.
I was talking to Trump for about a month.
So in KanYE's mind, it got brought up instantaneously. And I think we should watch the people here.
How did this dinner come to happen, and what happened?
I was talking to Trump for about a month. We had scheduled the dinner in October, and then he announced for president. He pushed the dinner back to November.
See, it's
I've been.
It's clever. And KanYE's a billionaire, powerful man. But he's not stable. And he's in a den of wolves. Right there. And I mean that in not necessarily that they're trying to, destroy him or anything, but they are trying to use the situation for multi-tiered purposes. Make money, makes sense. Get Conway. If I could have KanYE on my show, I would. Absolutely. 100%. Why wouldn't I? Changed my life. Literally. 10 minutes on my show, life changed. You could make the same case for Tim. He's not that big. It's a different level. But also, there's Milo. And he talked about, I'll go to the beginning before I sign off here in a little bit. I'll go to the beginning. Milo said in his interview with Tim Pool on his show, when asked if he would go back on Twitter, Milo said that he doesn't know if he would go back on Twitter because he thoroughly conquered that medium. He beat the game, so to speak. And now he's finding much more joy in manipulating or trolling or having influence behind the scenes in a more direct kind of way. And just recently, Milo, because of Elon Musk, it's interesting that Milo comes back right as Twitter is, I mean, they're going to let 62,000 new accounts back on that were banned. Today, I think, or here in the next few hours. So Tim, and this is a compliment, Tim is a smart guy, especially when it comes to what's going to make him money, what's going to build his business, what's going to help him reach that next rung. Because make no mistake, just like Tim Pool has said over and over and over again, you can't begrudge the guy for it. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. He wants to be KanYE West in his own way. He does. He wants to be a billionaire. Because Tim is the kind of guy that doesn't stop. And oftentimes you do that. And Tim has said this over and over again. You hang out with the people who are there. Not only to get their advice, but to get some of their sheen. And if you can then use that to your advantage, you know, Tim runs in the circles of the people who are very much anti-Trump. He claims to not be one way or the other. Okay, I'll take him at his word. But like the Daily Wire crowd that he's involved in, that he's worked with, that he talks to, that he communicates with, very much are in the DeSantis camp. I'm not saying the virtue of one or the other. But when you're talking about political operatives and people that control the media, if they, and I'm giving them the most charity here, if they believe that DeSantis is the better pick and Trump would be a disaster, wouldn't it be in their benefit to do a couple of things? To make a celebrity running for president again look as clownish as possible. Then ask yourself, could they accomplish that goal with KanYE West? Yes. Now, could if they wanted, if their goal is to say, I'm just being hypothetical here. If the goal is to have DeSantis win, right? If the goal is to have DeSantis win, would they benefit from attaching Trump's name to a historically useful tool in the Trump sphere of politics, like the white supremacist, anti-Semitic, racist in a Nick Fuentes, and get him in the same sphere? Would DeSantis benefit from that? Yes. Did Milo Yiannopoulos complain about how when Trump was in office, they would ask interns if Alex Jones or Milo Yiannopoulos, if they were fans of theirs? And if they were, they would escort them off the premises. Yes, he did. You got motive. You got opportunity. You got virtuous and non-virtuous benefit. And you don't even say virtuous, it's just benefit. If it's a Shark Tank, right? This is the way politics is done. It's the way media is done. Why wouldn't they do that? If DeSantis is their guy. Or even if just Milo has a dig against Trump and doesn't care which one wins. And Milo did a great, if my hypothesis is true, let's take it like this. And again, I'm not saying this is for sure, it's just what I see. If Milo were wanting to make people believe that he was avidly pro-Trump, which I believed, I did, and he laid a great narrative for that, a preemptive narrative in his episode of Timcast. He was digging on DeSantis and rah for Trump. Helps with the deniability. But then why would he turn around and run KanYE West's presidential campaign? I don't know. Milo Yiannopoulos is a master troll. And Tim Pool is a master, or becoming a master businessman, and is in his field very adept and pretty ruthless. Again, not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just stating a fact. He'd probably take it as a compliment if I were to sit here and say that to him. With all the dots we've connected today, I don't know. What do you think? I think you should like, subscribe, and share my channel. If you liked what I'm giving you today, I think shout out to Hard Hat Beast at Hard Hat Beast on Twitter, who should get his 30 sub account back today on Twitter or soon, because he had been canceled, by the way. Hard Hat Beast, he had an account called Hard Hat Intellectual that had 28,000 followers and was banned by old Twitter. So follow him, Hard Hat Beast and Hard Hat Intellectual, if it comes back. Smart guy, good guy. I'm going to have him back on the show. But like, subscribe, share the channel, hit the bell, all of that. Tim, good show. You all recovered at the end. I hope, not that they are even caring at all what I say. I know I was on the show, but I know he probably doesn't remember my name. But good show. And I hope KanYE gets some help. And I hope that I hope everybody comes out smelling like a rose, that it was all mutually beneficial media for them. And maybe even for me, because I grifted off a little bit today. So there you go. Thanks for watching the UnWokable podcast. Like, subscribe, share the channel. Share the video. That would be really helpful. Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon.